The moment Daniel was fired, he didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stood there, hands calloused, shirt soaked from hours on the factory floor, staring at the billionaire CEO who wouldn't even look him in the eye. "I gave you 12 years. Daniel whispered, voice cracking. 12 birthdays I missed. A wife I buried. A daughter I'm raising alone." Security hovered by the door. Daniel's steel-toed boots echoed on the marble tile as he stepped forward, holding a crumpled drawing, his daughter's, a sketch of him in a cape. "Superdad," it read. "This isn't about a machine part I messed up," Daniel said. "It's about who I used to be, and who I still am." The billionaire sighed, motioned toward security, but Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he looked the man in the eye and said 6 words that stopped everyone cold. "I know what you did here." The billionaire froze. His eyes twitched. A bead of sweat slid down his temple. What secret had Daniel uncovered? And how far would the rich man go to keep it buried? The factory floor buzzed with the clanking of machines and the steady hum of conveyor belts. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The scent of oil, sweat, and hot steel lingered like a second skin. Daniel Blake wiped his forehead with the sleeve of his faded gray coveralls, grease smudging across his temple. He glanced. At the time, 4:59 p.m., 1 minute before the shift ended. Just one more minute before he could head home, microwave leftover spaghetti, and hopefully catch his daughter's piano recital video before she fell asleep. He turned to log his final inspection notes when a voice crackled through the loudspeaker. "Daniel Blake, report to the front office immediately." Heads turned. Tools paused mid-air. Whispers floated like smoke across the room. Daniel's stomach sank. He walked through the long hallway toward the corporate wing. The walls changed from concrete to glass, the hum of machines replaced by silence and polished marble floors. A receptionist avoided his gaze. His steel-toe boots felt out of place against the clean white tile. Inside the office, the billionaire CEO Grayson Vos stood by the window, sipping something from a gold-rimmed glass. He didn't look up. Behind the desk sat 2 executives in suits too sharp for a factory town. "Daniel," one began coldly. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. Security will escort you out." Daniel blinked. "What? No severance? No pension? You signed a clause. Violation of procedure." "What procedure?" His voice trembled, but not with fear, with confusion. "What did I do?" The second executive slid a paper across the desk. "This isn't up for debate." Daniel stared down at the thin sheet. "Legal jargon. No explanation." His hands shook as he pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. Katie's drawing from that morning. Him in a red cape. Superd. He looked up, meeting Voss's eyes. "I gave you 12 years, Daniel whispered. "I missed birthdays. I buried my wife alone. I did everything right. And you throw me out like trash?" Voss didn't flinch, just nodded toward the door. Daniel stood up slowly. "Then let me say one thing before I go." Voss raised an eyebrow. Daniel's voice was calm. "Too calm. I know what you did here." Voss's glass paused mid-air. And for the first time, he looked scared. Before he was the man being escorted out, Daniel Blake was the man who never left. At 4:30 a.m., while most of the town still slept under a blanket of rusted rooftops and factory fog, Daniel's boots hit the pavement outside their 2-bedroom rental. He moved quietly, careful not to wake his daughter Katie, still curled up with her stuffed raccoon under a patchwork blanket. Every morning was the same routine. Thermos in hand, toolbox slung over one shoulder, a sticky note left on the fridge with a heart drawn next to "Breakfast is ready." Be good, kiddo. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't fast. But Daniel was the guy everyone relied on when the line jammed or the bolts misfired. They called him Steady Dan. Not because he was brilliant, because he was dependable. 12 years. On that floor, 12 years never late. 12 years patching machines older than he was, with fingers cracked from winters too cold and summers too long. Supervisors changed. Policies got meaner. Benefits shrank. But Daniel stayed, because someone had to. After Elena died, he didn't take time off. Couldn't afford to. He came back with red eyes, hands trembling, but no complaints. He worked through it for Katie. Always for Katie. Coworkers whispered about it sometimes, how he packed 2 lunches, how he taped school photos inside his locker like wallpaper, how his hands were always stained, but his daughter's shoes were always clean. He didn't talk much, but when he did, he listened more than he spoke. A quiet man in a loud world. A father first, worker second. One night, after fixing a jammed rotor in record time, his supervisor clapped him on the back. "You ever think of moving up, Dan?" Taking a desk job? Daniel just smiled, wiping his hands on a rag. "I've got a desk. It's pink, covered in glitter pens. My daughter makes me sit there and do homework with her." The supervisor laughed, but Daniel's smile faded as he looked at the factory floor machines he knew like old friends. A world built on repetition and sacrifice. He had built his life brick by brick, bolt by bolt, hour by hour. So when they fired him in seconds, it wasn't just a job they took. It was the one place where his quiet loyalty used to mean something. Long before Daniel Blake walked factory floors, he learned how to walk quietly through life. He grew up in a rust-bitten trailer on the edge of nowhere, where the roads were cracked and the mailbox leaned like it wanted to leave. His mother, Lorraine, worked nights at the diner and came home smelling of cigarettes and dish soap. His father was a rumor someone people used to mention, then stopped. By 10, Daniel knew how to cook ramen 6 ways and fold laundry with burned fingers. By 12, he was tall, quiet, and angry, but too tired to show it. The town offered nothing but old steel and older men with hunched backs and dirty hands. When he turned 16, Daniel applied to the local parts yard after school. No application, no interview, just a handshake and a toolbox. He loved the work. It was honest. When machines broke, you fixed them. When bolts stripped, you replaced them. No games, no promises. Just effort. He learned to measure things by sound. The way a belt whined before it snapped. The sigh of a drill winding down. The silence after a shift ended. That silence, especially, stayed with him. It followed him home at night, into a room filled with engine parts and second-hand posters. While other boys dreamed of escape, Daniel dreamt of stability, just a roof that didn't leak and a fridge that didn't lie. One winter, his mother came home with red eyes and a bruised wrist. She never explained. He didn't ask. That was how things worked. So when he met Elena at 19, sharp-witted, full of fire, everything he wasn't, he didn't know what to do with her laughter at first. She had college dreams. He had calluses. But she saw something in him, and for the first time, someone stayed. They built a life from the ground up. When Katie was born, he cried for the first time in a decade. He swore then silently, as always, that he would never be the kind of father who disappeared. He'd be present, reliable, unshakable. He kept that vow through poverty, through death, through every double shift. But the one thing he never expected was that the silence he fought to escape as a boy would one day be the way the world thanked him. The last morning, Daniel saw Elena alive started like any other. He was in the kitchen, packing Katie's lunch peanut butter, no crusts, extra apple slices just the way she liked. Elena stood behind him, hair still damp from the shower, sipping coffee from the chipped mug with "World's Okayest Mom" printed on it. She teased him for the note he slipped into Katie's lunchbox. Another drawing of a raccoon riding a motorcycle. "It's her favorite animal," he said, deadpan. "And I think today's raccoon has a sidecar." Elena laughed, kissed his cheek, and ruffled his hair. "You're such a dork." And then she was gone. Later that afternoon, Daniel was mid-shift, hunched over a jammed tension belt, when his supervisor tapped him on the shoulder. You need to take this call. He took the phone in the break room, hand still stained with grease. A woman's voice came through flat, too calm. From the hospital. There'd been an accident. A delivery truck. Wet roads. Elena didn't make it. For a long time, Daniel didn't say anything. He just sat there, fingers tightening around the receiver until his knuckles turned white. A buzzing filled his ears, drowning out the rest of the call. The break room clock ticked louder than ever. When he finally stood up, he didn't cry. He walked out of the factory without saying a word, took the bus to the hospital, and stood beside a white sheet that barely looked human. That night, Katie asked, "Where's Mommy?" He knelt down, heart breaking with each word. "Mommy's gone, sweetie." She blinked, confused. "Gone where?" He didn't answer. She cried herself to sleep. Daniel sat beside her bed the entire night, holding her tiny hand in his oil-stained fingers, staring at the wall, wondering how the world could keep turning without Elena in it. The light in the house dimmed after that. Photo stayed, but laughter didn't. Elena had been the brightness in the Blake family. Without her, even the sunrises felt gray. Daniel didn't take time off. He couldn't afford to. Instead, he folded grief into silence, packed it into lunchboxes, and poured it into overnights on the factory floor. The world didn't stop for a single dad. So he didn't either. The alarm buzzed at 4:30. Ain't same as always. Daniel rolled out of bed, joints stiff, eyes puffy from another restless night. The house was quiet, except for the soft whir of the old fridge and the gentle rustle of wind through the thin windows. He moved like a ghost, quiet, deliberate so. Katie could keep sleeping. In the kitchen, he made 2 lunches side by side, one in a dented metal lunchbox with his name scratched into the lid, and the other in a pink container with sparkly unicorn stickers peeling off the corners. A peanut butter sandwich, sliced apples, crackers, and a juice box for Katie. A cold burrito and black coffee in a thermos for him. He placed a sticky note inside her lunch every morning. Some were silly doodles. Others said things like, "You're my brave girl," or "Mom would be proud." Katie kept them all, folding them into a little notebook she called Dad's Notes to the World. After her mom's death, Katie stopped speaking for a few weeks. Just silence, wide eyes, and long stares. Daniel didn't force her. He just stayed near, left her space. He knew how silence worked, but slowly she came back. One morning, she left a note in his lunchbox. A crayon drawing of him as a superhero fixing a rocket ship. The cape said, "#1 Dad." It was the first time he cried since the funeral. Then on, their mornings became sacred. He'd tie her shoelaces, brush her hair the best he could, lopsided ponytails were his specialty, and walk her to the bus stop with a thermos in one hand and her tiny fingers wrapped around the other. Sometimes she looked back and waved from the window. Sometimes he waved even after the bus was gone. Then he'd head to the factory, where no one asked about his life and no one offered help. But that was fine. The work kept him busy. The rhythm gave him purpose. He lived day to day, paycheck to paycheck, but never missed a lunchbox, never forgot a recital, never once let her see how tired he was, because in a world that kept taking from them, his job wasn't just to provide. It was to prove every single day that she still had someone who stayed. The clatter of steel against steel was louder than usual that Monday morning. Daniel was midway through his 3rd coffee when a high-pitched screech cut across the factory floor. The conveyor belt on line C jolted, then froze. Sparks flared from beneath the frame. Tools dropped. Men shouted. Production halted. "Blake!" The floor manager barked. "Get over there, now." Daniel was already moving. Line C was older than most of the guys working it. He'd patched it up more times than he could count. Loose bearings, misaligned gears, worn belts. It had all been bandaged with spare parts and quick thinking. He crouched down, listening to the hum of the system. Something was off, but not in the way they said. The belt had overheated again, but this time the safety shutoff had been disabled. Deliberately. He flagged it, documented it in the logbook, called it in, but a few hours later, his report was gone, replaced with a typed memo blaming operator error. No mention of the shutoff system. No mention of Daniel. By lunch, the whispers had started. Dan screwed up line T. He missed something in the inspection. Cost us a whole shipment. He tried to explain, but the shift lead just shrugged. They already filed the report. Let it go, man. Let it go. That phrase echoed in his head as he sat in the locker room, staring at his calloused hands. He knew that machine like he knew his daughter's bedtime stories. Something didn't add up. He went back after hours, when the floor was empty, lights dim, just the drone of distant compressors. Opened the panel himself. Wires had been rerouted. Safety logs deleted. His gut tightened. Somebody had sabotaged the line and made him the fall guy. Back home, Katie was asleep on the couch, still in her school clothes, a book on her chest. Daniel didn't wake her. He just sat beside her, running, a hand over her hair, trying to calm the thunder rising in his chest. He wasn't just fighting machines anymore. He was being set up. And in a company this big, that could mean the beginning of the end. The next few weeks felt like drowning in molasses. Daniel showed up early, as always, but now eyes followed him differently, suspicious, distant. Conversations paused when he entered a room. Jokes didn't include him anymore. His name was whispered, then avoided. They had marked him. At first, it was little things. His overtime mysteriously disappeared from the schedule. His locker was moved to the far end of the hallway. His punch-in card was misplaced more than once, forcing him to argue with HR to get his hours corrected. Then came the real gut punch. Health benefits for Katie cut without warning. Administrative error, they said. He spent an entire afternoon at the local clinic begging them to extend her asthma medication. They gave him a week's supply and a sympathetic smile. He stood in the parking lot afterward, fingers tight around the brown paper bag, the weight of the world pressing into his shoulders. This wasn't just a glitch, it was pressure. Deliberate, strategic pressure, and he wasn't the only one. Rick, one of the older welders, was let go after failing a drug test he swore never happened. Maria from quality control got demoted without cause. Others were walking on eggshells, afraid to speak up. This place isn't a factory anymore. Rick whispered one day during break. It's a machine that eats people. Daniel watched as the company brought in consultants, all clean shoes and fake smiles. They walked the floor with tablets, making notes while ignoring the workers who built the place brick by brick. He asked questions. He was told to focus on your tasks. He submitted written concerns. He was told to trust the process. Even his supervisor, the one who once offered him a desk job, started looking at him like he was radioactive. One night, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, pills spread in front of him like a battlefield. Katie colored quietly nearby, humming to herself. He looked at her, innocent, unaware, and realized something brutal. This company wasn't broken. It was designed this way. Bleed them dry. Replace them quietly. Pretend it's merit. Daniel had played by the rules his whole life. But now the rules were rigged. And if he didn't fight back soon, they'd take everything. Daniel was halfway through his shift when a clipboard landed on his workbench with a thud. Need you to sign off on these inspection forms, said Curtis, the new floor supervisor with a sharp haircut and a colder smile. He didn't even look Daniel in the eye. Daniel glanced down at the forms. They were pre-filled. Dates, part numbers, approval checkmarks, all there. But the machine in question? He'd never even seen it. This is for line F, Daniel said. That's not my section. Curtis leaned in, voice low and casual. It is now. Daniel held the form tighter. I didn't inspect this. I'm not signing it. Curtis exhaled through his nose, annoyed. It's just paperwork. We're on a tight deadline. Legal needs a full sign-off by end of day. I'm not putting my name on something I didn't check." Curtis's smile dropped. "You know," he said, stepping closer, "people notice when someone stops being a team player. Guys who don't cooperate usually don't last long." Daniel stared at him, not angrily, just tired. "I'm not here to play games," he said. "I'm here to work, honestly." Curtis took the clipboard back without another word and walked off, but Daniel knew what he'd just done. He hadn't refused a favor, he'd defied a system. One built on silence, shortcuts, and complicity. That night, his locker was open when he got off shift. His lunch was gone. His daughter's latest drawing tape to the inside of the door was torn down, lying crumpled on the floor. He picked it up slowly, smoothed it out with calloused fingers. It was another version of Superdad, this time standing in front of a giant robot, holding a shield made of wrenches and bolts. In Katie's eyes, he wasn't just fixing things, he was protecting them. Daniel blinked hard, chest tight. He could have signed the form. No one would have noticed. No one but him. But if he started lying to survive, what kind of man would he be when Katie looked up at him tomorrow? He didn't know who had rigged the game. But he knew one thing for sure, he wasn't going to lose his soul just to keep playing. The factory was nearly empty, just the dull groan of the HVAC and the faint squeak of his boots echoing in the silence. Daniel had stayed late to finish an emergency repair on a backup compressor. It wasn't his usual job, but no one else had volunteered. As he made his way through the administrative wing, shortcutting through the back offices, he noticed something odd. One of the supervisor offices was unlocked. Lights off, door slightly ajar. It was Curtis's. Daniel hesitated. He wasn't a snoop. Never had been. But something about the way Curtis had been acting, the clipboard, the threats, the torn-up drawing, was still lodged in his mind like a splinter. He pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the air was stale. Papers stacked on every surface. A screen still glowing from sleep mode. And on the desk, almost hidden beneath a pile of forms, was a small, unmarked USB drive. He didn't think. Just slipped it into his pocket. Back home after Katie fell asleep to her favorite bedtime story. He read it twice, voice shaky. Daniel booted up the old laptop in the kitchen. He plugged the drive in. What he saw made his blood run cold. Internal memos, HR reports, spreadsheets, dozens of names, employees like him, tagged with coded terms like phase-out candidate, redundant asset, compliance risk. Next to them, timestamps, dismissal recommendations, even psychological evaluations. Someone had been watching everything. Lateness, pushback, union activity. One file detailed how safety mechanisms on multiple lines, including Line C, had been deliberately bypassed to speed up production. And when the machines failed, the blame was quietly assigned to high-risk personnel. Like Daniel. His hands trembled as he clicked through more folders. Hidden layoffs timed around stock buybacks. Secret memos signed by senior execs. Even one message from Grayson Voss himself. If they won't play ball, we replace them, quietly. Burn the paper trail. Daniel sat back in his chair, the screen casting a ghostly blue across his face. He had proof. Real, undeniable proof. With that proof came something else. Danger. This wasn't just corruption. It was calculated destruction. A machine built to crush people like him and make sure no one heard them scream. He looked over at Katie's drawing taped to the fridge, and he made a quiet vow. They picked the wrong dad. Daniel walked into the factory the next morning like nothing had changed, but everything had. He kept his head down, punched in, and moved through the motions, tightening bolts, checking valves, pretending he hadn't spent the night uncovering a conspiracy that could burn the entire company to the ground. By lunch, his name was echoing through the building. Again, but this time louder, uglier. Someone called near the break room. "Heard you've been poking where you don't belong." Daniel turned to see two junior techs smirking, nudging each other. "What's next, Dan? Planting bugs in the water cooler?" He didn't respond. Just kept walking. In his locker, he found his thermos spilled out. The soup he packed soaked. Everything: his gloves, his inspection logbook, even the drawing Katie had made that morning. A picture of them holding hands under a tree, smiling. It was ruined. No accident. Someone had broken the lock. He sat on the bench, fists clenched. The old Daniel, the quiet one, would have swallowed it. Taken it, moved on, but not now. He stormed to the supervisor's office, but Curtis wasn't there. HR wouldn't see him. No one returned his emails. His shift lead just shrugged and said, "It's not our job to manage your personal issues." That afternoon, security guards appeared on the factory floor. 3 of them, no warning. Daniel was pulled aside like a thief, in front of everyone. "What is this?" he asked, breath tight. "Violation of conduct policy," one guard said flatly. "Possession of unauthorized company materials." "What materials?" "You know what you took." Hands grabbed his arms. Someone filmed it on their phone. Someone else laughed. Daniel's toolbox clattered to the floor, scattering tools like bones across the concrete. As they dragged him out through the front doors, the CEO, Grayson Vuss, just happened to be walking in, polished suit. No expression. Daniel locked eyes with him. "You think burying me will hide what you did?" Daniel said, voice calm but shaking. Voss didn't answer. Just adjusted his cuffs and walked past. Daniel was left standing on the sidewalk covered in sweat and dust. Pockets empty, heart racing. The gates shut behind him. He wasn't just out of a job. Now he was marked, isolated, humiliated. But he wasn't done. Because truth, once uncovered, has a habit of clawing its way to the surface. Daniel sat alone on the edge of the curb, across the street from the factory gates. His hands were filthy grease under his nails, dried soup on his sleeves, and his head throbbed from the pressure of everything collapsing at once. He'd been fired, publicly humiliated, treated like a criminal for doing the right thing. He felt hollow. A hollow man with nothing left. He opened his lunchbox, not even knowing why. Habit, maybe. Hope, maybe. Inside, the sandwich had been crushed by the chaos, half soaked in the soup that had leaked hours earlier. And then he saw it. Tucked inside, untouched by the mess, was a folded piece of paper. Katie's drawing. It was simple, her usual crayon swirls, stick figures, and bright colors. But this one was different. It showed Daniel standing on top of a tall mountain, a little girl perched on his shoulders, her arms stretched toward the sky. Behind them was a giant factory, drawn in black and gray. Flames and lightning filled the sky above it, but the caption Katie had written in careful, blocky letters at the bottom made his throat tighten. "Dad is bigger than the bad guys." Daniel stared at it for a long time. That little girl didn't care if he had a job. She didn't care about stock prices, or memos, or powerful men with suits and secrets. She just cared that he showed up, that he fought for her, that he told the truth, even when it cost everything. He felt something rise in his chest, past the shame, past the anger, past the defeat. Something he hadn't felt in weeks. Fire. Maybe they had taken his job. Maybe they had dragged his name through the dirt. But they didn't take him, and they didn't scare him anymore. He folded the drawing carefully, slipped it into his wallet, stood up. He wasn't going to beg for his job back. He wasn't going to wait for the system to give him justice. He was going to make them answer, because this wasn't just about him now. It was about every worker they'd thrown away. And the little girl at home, who believed her dad was bigger than the bad guys. That night, the house was silent. Katie had fallen asleep curled on the couch, clutching the stuffed raccoon her mom had sewn for her years ago. The cartoon still flickered faintly on the muted TV, but Daniel wasn't watching. He was at the kitchen table, laptop open, heart pounding. The USB drive sat next to him like a loaded weapon. The files inside it, those memos, those secret layoffs, those fake reports, they weren't his company secrets. They were a blueprint for corruption. A map of manipulation where profits were pumped up by gutting lives. Daniel stared at the blinking cursor in his email draft window. He had written and rewritten the message 6 times. To the press. He had chosen a local investigative reporter, Jillian Reyes. She was known for exposing shady developers and corrupt city officials. She wasn't afraid of big names. And she answered her emails, but hitting send would be irreversible. His fingers hovered above the keyboard. What if they came after him? What if they tried to take Katie, frame him for theft? He knew how men like. Voss worked surgical in their power, polite in their cruelty. Then he looked across the room. Katie was fast asleep, her small chest rising and falling. Crayon-stained fingers resting against her cheek. Daniel thought of the factory workers still inside those walls. The ones with mortgages, sick kids, broken backs. The ones too scared to speak. He had a voice now. And more than that, he had evidence. He took a breath, clicked send. No fanfare. No dramatic music. Just the soft whoosh of the email flying into cyberspace. And the thunder of his heart in his ears. He sat back. The weight didn't lift, it shifted. Became something heavier but purposeful. Before heading to bed, he slipped Katie's SuperDad, drawing back into his wallet, pressing it flat with both palms. The world might try to tear him down, but they forgot one thing. You can't threaten a man who's already lost everything and still stands up for someone smaller than himself. The call came just as the streetlights flickered on. Daniel had just stepped out to check the mailbox when a black SUV pulled up in front of his house. 2 men in press suits stepped out, calm, efficient, rehearsed. Daniel. Blake? One of them asked. Daniel didn't answer. He already knew. We need to ask you a few questions, the other said. Regarding a breach of proprietary data. Daniel glanced back toward the window. Katie's silhouette was visible through the curtain, bouncing around the living room with her toy microphone. She was putting on a concert for her stuffed animals. Can it wait until morning? He asked, voice dry. It'll be easier if you come now. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He just stepped inside briefly, kissed Katie's forehead, and whispered, I'll be back soon, Peanut. Just grown-up stuff. She nodded, not even looking up. Okay, Daddy. She didn't know that she'd wait by the window for hours. That bedtime would come and go. That her favorite book would sit unopened on the couch. Daniel sat in the corporate conference room for nearly 5 hours. No arrest. No charges. Just pressure. Company lawyers in tailored suits slung veiled threats with friendly tones. You're a good worker, Daniel. We'd hate to see this get out of hand. Think about your daughter. You don't want this to affect custody, do you? Just return what you took, sign the agreement, walk away. He said nothing. They pushed harder. Suggested maybe he'd misunderstood what he saw. That it was classified strategy, not corruption. That whistleblowing was a serious offense. That people like him didn't understand executive complexity. Daniel smiled for the first time that night, just a quiet, tired smile. You think I'm scared of you, he said. But I've already been through worse. When they finally let him go, it was nearly midnight. Back home, Katie was curled on the couch in her pajamas, fast asleep, a book still open in her hands. The porch light was on. He carried her to bed without waking her. But in that moment, Daniel realized the fight wasn't just about the factory anymore. They were trying to break him at the one place he was strongest, his daughter's trust. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, cold and merciless. Daniel sat slouched in a metal chair, hands clasped, staring at the table like it carried the weight of his entire world, alone, no officers, no lawyers, just silence. Then it hit. His chest heaved once, twice, and then the dam broke. A deep, guttural sob escaped him, the kind that doesn't ask permission. The kind that belongs to men who've spent too long pretending they're fine.